I guess the most of you know a scenario like this. You have made a journal, you've loved the journal so much that you've worked in it very often, and then it gets such bulky, like my blind date journal that you can see here. As you can see, the spine is way too small to hold all of those pages, and the signatures are so bulky that I can't handle this journal anymore. If you want to know a solution how to come from this to this, then this video is for you. In this video, I would like to show you how you can expand the spine of your journal. That is possible with nearly any journal that you've made. I will show you step by step how to take the signatures out without destroying them, and then making the spine a little bit wider so that everything fits into your journal, and especially the proportions of your journal are back like in the beginning when you have started creating it. So this is the end result, and that's what I want to reach today with my blind date journal. Hi there, this is Luisa Heinzel. Welcome to my channel Junk Journal Art. Nice to see you here. Let's go right into this project. I'm really excited to do this because, yeah, this is my blind date journal. It's my baby. But let's do this. I can't work in this journal anymore, so I have to do that. And I'm trying to explain step by step what I'm doing here. So the first very, very important thing is that you search for the middle of each signature and then clip everything together with some paper clips so that the pages of each signature can stay together until the end of your process. This is a very, very important thing because we want to use or reuse the holes in our signatures that we've made when we first bound the journal. So we don't want to have the pages move around or something like that. So please make sure that you have enough paper clips on hand and that you do this step really, really carefully. So I'm searching for every middle of every signature, and then I'm putting some paper clips so that nothing can move anymore. And yeah, it depends a little bit on how you have bound the journal when you did it for the first time. I mean, when you created your journal, then you have bound it with a special technique. I have used a hidden hollow spine for this journal, but this is also possible with a normal hidden spine. And of course, it's also possible with this this spine that is visible, where you can see the threads on the spine on the outside of the book. But no matter what you did, what binding technique you did in the beginning, make sure that you have all those signatures in a really, really sturdy way clipped together. I like to use those smaller paper clips for that because this way, as you can see here, for example, I can I can handle those bulky signatures and those bulky pages a little bit better. For me, it's easier to put some more paper clips to the signature than less bigger paper clips. It's also a little bit dangerous when you use bigger paper clips that are going to the middle of the page. For example, here on the right side, you can see those die-cut butterflies. You don't want to destroy them. So please make sure that you don't destroy what is on your page. I mean, if you go over the page with the paper clip and it's really big, it can happen that you damage your die cuts or your collage or something like that. Be careful with that, please. So here I have made this with the last signature as well. As you can see, it's really hard to handle that. For me, it's easy if I put the book in this direction that you can see here in front of me. I've learned that during my process here, so that you don't have the book in front of you like this, but in the other way around. Do you know what I mean? Then it's easier to handle. You can see better what's going on your pages, and that way you can put the paper clips way more easy. Now we have to cut our original threads. Yes, because we want to take out all of those signatures. For that, I'm putting a book below my junk journal. So, oh, excuse me, please. So that I can reach this thread relatively easy. You can take some tools to get the thread up a little bit so that you can cut that easier because you can't reach that with your fingernail, for example. When you have cut everything, then carefully tear this out. Perhaps tear is not the right word in this case. I should say take it out. You don't want to destroy it. And I'm using my pliers here because I don't want to cut into my pages, of course. Be careful that you have a really, really sharp pair of scissors, that you lift the thread up a little bit so that you can make sure that you don't hurt your paper by cutting into it with your scissors. You don't want to make the holes bigger that are in the signature. We want to use the same holes later, and for that it's really important that you don't destroy the paper or make the holes bigger. I had this problem here. As you can see, this pocket is in the middle of the signature, and I've glued it together so that the thread is inside of the pocket. But that's no problem. You can just tear it out like this, then cut the thread in the same way like you did it with the other signatures, and then later on you can just take this pocket and glue it to the page, or you can make a flip out of this pocket. Because of the fact that it is glued together, I can't put it back into the signature like it was before. I can't bind it in with my new thread because it's glued together, but of course I can use it as an embellishment in another way. So here I have reached to take out all of the signatures, and oh, that's also an important point. I have put them into my signature holder here in exactly the same order like I had them in my original journal. I did that because, you know, this Blind Date Journal project is a collaboration with Susanne from Bollenhut Art. We have swapped our journals, and sent them to each other. And Susanne has worked in my journal. I have worked in her journal. That means I have a piece of art that has an order. If you have a journal where you perhaps have written a diary, then of course you need this order. If you want to change the order of the pages because that is possible for your journal, then do it in this step and decide for the new order of your pages. Here I'm in the next step cutting this cover exactly in half after I have removed those leftovers from the threads in the inside. I have some fabric in the inside of my journal. That means I can cut the spine of the journal, or this book that I have originally used for this. And now I'm taking some scissors to cut the fabric because, I can't cut that with my knife, of course. But with this cut through the spine, you get a really good line where you can cut this, and then you have these two pieces. And because I had this hollow spine, I have this little slot here in between of the original book spine, in between of the original book spine and my fabric. There's a little slot, and I want to put my new spine into this slot. So I'm making sure that I can bend it a little bit so that the space in between is big enough. In this step, you have to figure that out for yourself. I can give you no general rule for this, what I did here and what is coming next, because I don't know how you have bound your journal when you did it the first time. So of course you can also cut the whole spine off and then make the new spine. That's also possible, but for me this is the more easier way, and it's more sturdy, of course, when you have this original piece from the original spine and this mechanism that the cover can flip. Do you know what I mean? You have this original slot between the cover, front and back, and the spine. And for me, that's really good because, yeah, it's sturdy and I know that there can't go anything wrong or something like that. So, and then you have to figure out how much space you will need in between of your single signatures for the new spine. So here I'm trying that out with my ruler. I've cut out a bit of my video here because that took me really long. My signatures are relatively, not so equal. Some of them are really thin, some of them are really thick. So I've decided that I want to have 1 centimeter in between of each signature and 1 centimeter in front of the first signature and 1 centimeter after the last signature. That means I have 7 signatures, by the way. That means I need a spine that is 8 centimeters wide. And I've cut that from just a piece of leftover material here. And then I'm deciding for the height. Of course, this has to be the same height like my journal is. So I'm taking a little, I'm taking a pencil and then I'm make a little mark and then I cut that to the right length. So this piece is now the new spine. It has to be exactly the same height like your journal is, and the width is depending on, of course, how many signatures you have and what you've decided for the distance between each signature. I want to have the proportions for my journal, the best that I can reach here. I mean, 8 centimeters for such a small book is really, really wide for a spine. Of course, you can also put not only 1 centimeter between the signatures, you could also do 1.5 centimeters or even more. But for me, then the proportions of the book that I will have in the end are not very good. It looks really strange. So I've decided to go with 1 centimeter in between of the signatures. Then I have put my new spine in between of these materials. I mean, in between of the fabric and the original spine piece. And now I'm checking if this will work. Before I glue anything, I make sure that this will work in the end. And as you can see, it works. So this is now, it looks like a journal that is filled really, really well. But I can't go with a wider spine, as I explained before. So I will live with that when I now glue everything together. And later on, I have to work in my journal because there are some more episodes of this blind date journal project. Then it can happen that it gets a little bit more bulky and gets this tiny alligator style, but I'm okay with this. So here I'm putting my bookbinders glue in between of these both pieces there. So that's exactly in this slot in between of my fabric that I had glued into the book when I did it the first time and the spine. If you don't have such a slot because you haven't made this hello spine thing, then of course you can also glue the original spine piece directly to this piece of cardboard. You can cover that up with some fabric later. But for me, this was the easiest way. As I said, in this step, you have to figure that out, how you can do that, depending on the original method that you used when you constructed the book for the first time. I like to use bookbinders glue to glue this because it glues really sturdy, of course. It dries relatively fast. And when I press this down, I am sure that everything will stay in place. Of course, we have to do this whole thing with the other part of the cover as well. So I'm taking this, make sure that you have that everything in the right direction. With this writing on the spine, it's relatively easy, of course, but please make sure that you have this in the right direction so that your cover is not upside down later. Everything can happen when we are making junk journals. So we don't want to make this mistake. Okay, so then I have this grid cutting mat underneath my book. That's relatively yeah, not so good for a video. Sorry, the picture of my video is really strange here, but I need this grid to have 90-degree angles everywhere. So of course I don't want to have one part of the cover higher as the other, for example. And you also have to make sure that the spine pieces, these green pieces now, are parallel to each other. So this piece of cardstock, what you can see now there in the middle, of course, has to be the same width on the top and the bottom. I like to control that before I go on, before the glue is dry. And now I'm cutting a second piece from my cardboard. That's exactly the width that I have in the middle of these both pieces, because we have a difference in the height, of course. When you feel over this, you have the fabric, then it goes down to the cardstock, and then it goes up to the fabric. And we don't want to have that. It's not so visible in the video here, but we need this middle part here to fill that up, to have the same height on the whole spine. Otherwise, your signatures will get too differently when you put them back into this journal later. So then, of course, we need something to cover this area up. I've decided to use some fabric. I've just teared that to the right width, and it's approximately a little bit longer than twice of the height of the journal. Arc, I don't know how to explain that. You will see that in a second, because I want to wrap that around my whole spine to get this fabric to the outside and to the inside. I will tell you in a second why I'm doing that. So I'm using some coffee and some golden watercolor paint to dye this fabric. Then I'm drying that with my heat gun. Make sure that this piece of fabric, if you want to use fabric, is really, really dry before you go on. Otherwise, you will have some really ugly marks from the glue on your fabric. Of course, you can do any design to your new fabric that you want. I've tried to make something that matches the colors of my journal. So now we have this piece of cardboard in this slot. Then I'm trying to find out where my fabric has to be. As you can see, I'm putting that to the outside of the spine as well. And here you can see this overlapping thing that will go like this later. So it has to be, the double length of the height plus a little bit, 5 centimeters or something like that. Then I'm putting the glue only to this small piece of cardboard. Don't put the glue to the fabric, please. So I want to glue the fabric now to this piece because this will be my new hidden spine, the piece that I need to sew the signatures on, and then later on I will put that into the journal so that you can't see the thread from the outside. So I will not sew through the whole spine, if that makes sense. Then I'm placing the fabric carefully without moving it, pressing this down and make sure that I have no wrinkles or something like that. And then I can take that off. So below this fabric, there's now this cardboard or cardstock. I really don't know the difference. Sorry, a really sturdy piece of material, I'm drying that with my heat gun. Sorry. The glue has to be really dry as well. Here you can see that from the back side, and I've made a template now. I've used this grid paper to make my template, and now I'm tracing the original holes from my signatures to this template. That should be relatively easy. Because you can see where you have poked the holes. And that's also the reason why I said in the beginning that we don't want to make the holes bigger. Do you know what I mean? If the holes are destroyed when you cut the signatures out, then of course you will have a problem in this step. But when you do that carefully, then this is no problem. You can just trace the holes to your grid paper, place that on top of this fabric thingy here, and then poke the holes. Some of the holes now, that's for the first and the last signature, are going only through this fabric, and the rest of them are going through the cardstock and the fabric. But that's okay. Of course, we want to cover this whole inner part. It's relatively strange to explain that, but some of this material, of course, will only go to this fabric of the inside of the cover, and the rest will go into the slot. You will see that later, then that will make sense. So now I'm taking a thread and I'm going from the outside to the inside on the first bottom hole of this piece and then into my signature. And this is the first signature that I, in my original journal, had as the first signature as well. So I'm now taking the signatures in exactly the order that they were in the original journal, and then I'm binding them on top of this thing here. I'm using a 6-hole binding method here. Oh, excuse me, because that's the number of holes that I had in my original journal as well. As I said, we will use the same holes and the same binding method. So if you have used, for example, a 3-hole pamphlet stitch or something like that, then you have to use a 3-hole pamphlet stitch here again. Otherwise, you will have some holes in your signatures that you don't want there. I mean, if you had 6 holes in the beginning and now you would decide, oh, 3 holes would be easier, then you have to live with those additional holes that you will see in the end. And I don't like that. And I'm a fan of this 6-hole stitch. So I'm doing this in the same way like I did it in the beginning. So for the first and the last signature, this was relatively difficult because I'm sewing here only through the fabric. For the rest of the signatures, it's not such a problem because there's this sturdy cardstock in the back. But here, when you go through the fabric, and especially when you come from the top hole of the first signature to the next top hole of the second signature, then please make sure that you don't do that with too much pressure. No, not pressure. The opposite of pressure. Do you know what I mean? When I take the thread here through this hole, I have to make sure that it has enough space on the back so that the fabric can't get crumbled up in this area. So then I'm here on the top of the next signature. So I'm taking the second signature now and going in through the first hole on the top and then with the same method to the bottom. And I made the experience that sometimes it's relatively difficult to find the original holes. So make sure that you are in the right hole. Otherwise, your signatures will not be in the same height as the others. So that can be a problem when you have decorated your journal relatively when you have much decorations in your journal and when you perhaps also have glued something to the first or the last page of the signature relatively close to the holes, then it can be a little bit difficult to find the holes. But I can recommend, and that's the only recommendation that I can give here, take your time. And especially take your time between the first and the second signature to make sure that the fabric is really good in place. I couldn't find another solution than using fabric for this, especially this small strip where the first signature is sewn in on and the last. I couldn't find another solution because this material has to be really thin. Otherwise, if the new spine gets too thick, then the width of my journal will not fit anymore. Do you know what I mean? When this new spine is too thick and I would put some really heavy material for this hidden spine to it, then the pages will peek out too much because, of course, the signatures will have more distance to the original spine than before when you put a material in between of the original spine and your signatures that is too thick. Do you know what I mean? And that can look really, really strange. So I have taken my time here to sew these things in. And yeah, I mean, sewing in signatures is one of my most favorite things about junk journaling. For me, this is really relaxing. This is something that tells me I'm a perfectionist. Don't talk about that anymore, Louise. For me, it's really like a meditation. But yeah, please take your time and be patient, even if it's not your favorite thing to do with this junk journaling thing. So now I'm putting the glue to this middle part of my spine, and then I'm taking the signatures, and now I'm trying to get this cardboard piece exactly into this slot. Of course, it has to be exactly in this slot, like it was before when there were no signatures. Make sure that it has the right position in the height. I mean, that nothing is peeking out on the top or the bottom. And when you have that, then you can glue these little pieces of fabric that are now overlapping here to the original fabric. I'm really sorry that I can't show you that more in detail in camera. It was relatively hard for me to hold this while I'm gluing it. That was relatively strange. But yeah, I've never experienced something like this before because I haven't done that with a decorated journal. I mean, I've made my spines wider with a journal that was not so full. But yeah, this is the first one that is really heavy embellished. Here I'm making a mistake. You can see this is a little bit, yeah, not so straight. In this step, I haven't realized what that was. Later on, I realized that my fabric got a little bit crumbled there, but I've realized that so that I could take it off and glue it back again. So then we are taking this overlapping piece of fabric, and that we want to glue this to the spine now. And the reason why I've left this fabric so long, you can see that in a second. I am wrapping this around the spine there, as you can see. And this way, I can get a really, beautiful edge on the top of the book and also on the bottom. So if you cut the fabric there, here you can see this edge. It looks really cool. It looks like it was like this before. If you would cut the fabric there on the top and glue a second piece to the spine, then you would see, of course, the edge on the top and the bottom, and I don't want that. And this is a little trick to manage that and to get a really nice edge there on the top and the bottom. Then I'm gluing the rest here. So here I've watered down my bookbinder's glue a little bit because this fabric is relatively thin, and I want to make sure that the glue can't come through the fabric. And I found out that when you water down the bookbinder's glue a little bit, then that happens not so often, I would say. So make sure that the glue is there, but not too thick. And then I'm placing this here where I want it. Make sure that you don't have any ugly, areas there, that everything is flat. And then we can take this overlapping piece from the bottom and glue that on top of this other fabric so that we get a nice edge on the bottom as well with this fabric that's going around this bottom part in the same way like I've shown you a second before on the top. So that makes this top edge and the bottom edge exactly the same look, and I really like that. We don't want to see in the end that this journal, has gotten a new spine. I mean, it shall look like we have planned that from the very beginning. And I've tried to find some tricks that are helpful to reach this goal. The spine for me was now a little bit empty, boring. This 8 centimeters was really, really much for me. I had the feeling that the proportion of the book is still a little bit weird. So I've decided to take this fabric here, and this has a little bit of lace on the one side and on the other side, and in the middle there's this strip of fabric. And as you can see here, it divides the spine a little bit when I now put that on. So you will see in a second what I mean. If you have one piece of fabric, like I'm having here now in this situation, then the spine, of course, looks really wide. It's this feeling that your eye has that the spine is really, really wide. And this fabric here brings this illusion to your eye that there's something else on the spine, not only fabric, but this mixture of fabric and lace. You have one strip lace, then one strip fabric, and one strip lace. And this way, I think it looks a little bit like this piece of fabric in the middle is the spine, and the rest is going around. So the spine makes this illusion that it is still relatively narrow or small. Do you know what I mean? It's only an optical illusion, but for me, this makes a really big difference. After I have glued this middle part, of course, I have to glue the lace around this corner there. First of all, I thought I don't want to do that. I want to leave this look of my cover like it was before, but when I placed it there and looked at it, I thought this is such a great addition to this journal. This fabric I had dyed with some distress oxide inks, and I was so in love when I had this result that I thought, why not using it here? It matches the color of the cover. This green and this oxide inked fabric looks really, really nice, I think. It gives it this special touch, but of course that's personal preference if you like that or not. You could also only put the material, for example, lace or fabric, only to the spine, not wrapping it around to this front cover and the back cover, because if you did it the same way like I did it here, it's not necessary that you put it there, because we have the original slot in between of the cover and the spine. So that means this area there, where I'm now putting the glue, is really sturdy. What I'm doing here is only decoration. It would be, it would have the same sturdiness also without this fabric lace thingy. If you had cut the spine totally and you only have the front and the back cover, and you've put a new spine, a totally new spine to your book covers, then I would recommend to wrap something around to make it more sturdy, because then you have this cut, in this case on the left side of this cover here now. And when you have this cut there, then it's relatively, it makes sense when you put something over that to make it more sturdy and to make it look more beautiful. That covers up this cutting slot if you have cut it like that. In the last step, I've taken some distress oxide ink to make this a little bit older, and that it looks more used, even if I haven't distressed the rest of this cover. I mean, the edges of this green cover piece are not distressed, but I wanted to have this, that it looks more like a rectangle when I look to it, if that makes sense. So now I have this. I'm really, really happy. I think I will put a new label to the spine later, but when I filmed this, this was not totally dry. I have to decide that. So from the top, it looks like this now. As you can see, it's relatively good filled, but it doesn't have this alligator mouth anymore. So I'm really happy, especially because now I can work in my journal That was not possible before. As you can see now, the pages are laying flat. It's also it's still a journal that's good embellished. It has much in it. I know that. But now I can work in it and I can show that to you. I can film that with my camera and show that to you. So that means we can work in this blind date journal now without any problems. The next time when you will see this journal, I'm creating the dessert of Susanne's menu. I'm hoping that you will follow me then. I wish you a very, very great day. Stay healthy, stay creative. See you the next time. Bye bye.